I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I've been a musician and passionate music lover for as long as I can remember, and spent a stupid amount of time listening to mostly new music every week. Get involved and help grow this community. Follow on socials, Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, and soon a YouTube channel too, and email me 10,000indie@gmail.com if you have any ideas or want to get involved in the podcast itself. I'd love to hear from you. Zoe Hayter is a half-Czech, half-English singer-songwriter who has lived in Czechia, France and Ireland. Beginning her musical journey at a very young age, she busked to raise money to make her first album, Only Breathing, when she was just 14 years old. Last year saw the release of Zoe's debut solo EP, Raw, which was followed up with the single veux. That's a vague pronunciation. That's about as good as my French gets. And that was released in June. She has played and toured with Glen Hansard, who has helped her get heard on the radio too. She writes her songs in both English and French and has a strong folk-led sound to her music. Zoe, welcome to the 10,000 Hours of Indie podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So, Raw is 6 tracks. I'm a bit of a music nerd and an obsessive. Would you consider it an EP or a mini album?
That's a good question. I probably don't even know as much of the terms as you would yourself. I mean, my cheeky way of going about it is I just call it a record, which is very sneaky, but it just sounds so much cooler, you know? I guess I'd say an EP otherwise if you're getting in the terms a bit and stuff, you know? If you're trying to be poetic or smart about it, then I try to say record, and unless someone calls me out on that.
Does that make you a little bit old school in your thinking if you call it a record?
Oh, for sure. I don't know. We live in a world that is, you know, definitely full of labels for the good and the bad. You know, I'm not saying that's one or the other. I think it's definitely a lot of the daily life right now, you know. But already, thank you for the beautiful introduction. Like, already you can hear from who I am and my background that sometimes it's difficult for me to add myself to anything, you know, because people ask you like, where are you from? What do you do? And all of that. And I can't really give a simple answer. People are they are slightly looking to put you in a certain label so it's easier for them. I'm never going to say like, oh, I'm Czech, I'm English, I'm either of this. So I guess that's a long explanation of me being a bit old school like that maybe too.
Well, I like the fact you said you're Czech and English. However, you've never lived in Czechia or England.
I did. I have lived in Czech. Yeah.
Czech. Okay, you have.
Yeah. I haven't really lived in England long term. I go to London almost once a month to work and to visit my family and stuff. But yeah, I hadn't lived there for longer than a few weeks. But in Czech, I went to school there and everything. Yeah.
And then you spent your sort of teenage years in Paris, was it?
Yeah. I moved to Paris when I was 19 for 2 years. Yeah.
Do you speak fluent French, or do you just use it for writing because it sounds better?
I like that you said it sounds better. I think that's interesting. No, I have fluent French. So my family, my dad's parents, my grandparents would have lived in France for over 30 years. They have a theater company here and everything. So I when I was growing up, I'd be spending all my summers here. And then at 19, I started studying at theater school in Paris for 2 years. So, you know, that was, obviously that was my everyday life was French, but I wouldn't say I'm like an expert on the language or anything, but I think it has a certain charm. It's like, you know, when Nina Simone sang in French, I mean, it's a bit of a different, it's not like a French person singing in French, you know, because I think that's a different thing. But yeah, it's one of my languages. I grew up speaking 3 languages, so Czech, English, and French. And for a long time, people have been telling me, why are you only writing in English? You know, because there's so much variety in those 3 languages that you have. And I think, you know, everything takes its time. And with this song, somehow, when I was writing it, Je te veux would be the first song that I started writing. At least it's kind of half English, half French. And now I write more things in French. And, you know, that's only a new release. But somehow it just felt right. You know, I was writing it and I was like, actually, this would sound so much better in French. So I'm liking the mixture so far.
because the new single's in both languages, I did have to look up a few of the French terms. I mean, I did French at school, as every English guy does, but that was 30 years ago, and I'm a little rusty.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, I'd like to think as well that you can kind of understand from the song what's going on either way, even if you the whole emotion of it, and obviously the title is "Je te veux" means "I want you." I think that's quite clear as well. But
yeah, no, well, I've spoken to some people who write in languages I really don't understand, and if the music's well enough done, I think the music speaks for itself, and you don't necessarily need to understand the lyrics every time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, as I said, I liked when you said that it sounds better in French, because I suppose the universal language for songs or for a lot of art would be English, just because that's the language, most people understand and stuff like that. But it is, yeah, I think it's as well when you're growing. I mean, growing as a person and as an artist, you get to discover, all these different, like, I don't know, Portuguese is a beautiful language to listen to music. I don't understand any of it, but if you listen to Brazilian music, it gives it a whole other meaning when you're listening to it,
Maybe your old school records term harkens back to the time when it didn't matter what language music was in the 60s and 70s in England, for example. There were lots of number ones or at least top tens in other languages, which there aren't so much these days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I played the Je te veux song to people, they were kind of like, oh, it sounds a bit like Amy Winehouse, but French, and I thought that was kind of one of the biggest compliments I could get. I'm really very much enjoying discovering the writing in that language and seeing, again, as I said, it's different. Like, I'm not really a French person writing in that language, so it's got a whole different label to itself, if you may, or whatever, because it's interesting. It's a great journey.
So are you in Ireland now, or are you in France now?
I just got to France. I was in San Francisco for the month of June. I was actually working at the United Irish Culture Centre. They have like a camp about Ireland, kind of Irish culture, Irish music and stuff for kids there. So I was working, teaching them music and theatre and all of that. So that's been really just a great month doing that, and obviously being in San Francisco. And it was my third time there this year. I travel already a lot around Europe, but this has kind of become another place that I'm getting close to that's a lot further from everything else I know, which is great. So yeah, that was amazing. And I was in London last week, and now I just got to France to rehearse theatre play with my grandparents. I mentioned they have a traveling theatre company. It was founded in Cornwall in 1971. Yeah, they've been traveling ever since, but the base since the 80s has been in France. So we're doing a new show, which is, it's as much as everything right now with the arts, the performing arts especially. It's a big challenge, so they would have used to traveled in a huge circus tent for 400 to 600 seats, for people. And we still did a tour actually with Glen with that like 3 years ago, but even now it's becoming more and more obvious that that's just, we're living in different times. So we're still taking the challenge upon us, but it'll be like a smaller production with about 80, a tent for 80 people, and a bit of a different, again, another chapter, another kind of life given to it. It's going to have loads of music in it, and it always does in these productions. We're opening by the end of the month in France, and then we're touring Ireland in August and September.
Wow. I should start with the questions.
Yeah, there you go. That's go on. I'm ready. Okay.
So first up, how would you describe your music?
Oh wow! I mean, you can already tell that I have a way with words and I can keep going for a long time as well. So how can I make this short and precise?
Well, shall I say what I hear? And then maybe you could add on to that.
Okay.
When I'm listening to it, I can hear sort of a very jazzy French feel to some of the songs. There's this sort of almost chanson, sort of 1920s, 30s. I interviewed somebody a few weeks ago. I don't know if you've looked back at what I've been doing, but I interviewed an Irish singer-songwriter. Well, she's French-Irish, Zoe Hayter. I think you have a similar sort of thing going on.
Yeah. That's funny. That's how I came about your channel, because I've seen, the interview with Zoe, and I met her a couple of times at festivals and stuff, but I'm following her, and she's got her first record out now, which I think is amazing. But yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a nice thing to hear. I love her stuff for sure.
So I say sort of a jazzy French sort of 20s, 30s feel to some things. I listened back to your single from 2019.
Oh yeah.
And that's very different. I think you were still discovering your voice and maybe trying some different things back then.
I was 17 or 16 when we were recording that, 17 when it released, Yeah, I'm really happy with how things are going in the sense of the style. Like, I always thought that was a really tough question to answer for me because, yeah, as you say, I was searching. I mean, now it's 10 years since I've been performing live, like all the time, kind of full time since I was 13, basically, and I had a band. I lived in Prague, and then that's when we released that first record, Only Breathing, and all of that. And then I started performing solo when I was 15. Yeah, I started doing all that pretty young, and obviously your voice is developing all the time, your inspirations, your style, everything, And I think you have to be really patient with all of this, but also chase it in a good way. Like, it's a funny one, and I think it's always interesting. Like, the artists I find inspirational the most is that go through loads of different periods of loads of styles for themselves and eventually find themselves in something. And yeah, definitely when I was 13 to 15, I was a complete, I had songs that, I don't know, one of them was called Just a Rebel, and I was just kind of almost screaming into the mic, that I'm a rebel who's wearing Doc Martens and ripped jeans, and I don't know, and I was really into that. And then I think then I was trying to make that more acoustic. And yeah, it did, as I said, from growing up in different backgrounds, obviously very theatrical background in different countries and different cultures. I think there was always some sort of a mix that I found hard to place. I think it's all about the balance of still finding a place, but not completely labeling yourself. So I think, yeah, I'm definitely have started finding a voice that in the new release, Je veux is first one of these tracks where you can really hear that, where I think because I've also started working with new musicians that I'm really comfortable with, that I love working with. So I think they've influenced me as well. For instance, with the jazz thing, the musicians I recorded this song with are very much into jazz, So although the song was already going that way, they definitely made that grow. If I can say everything in one word, which I think is quite obvious now, it would be just timeless, Like, you can listen to that song, as you say, would it be 1920s or is it from 2025? If I can call out people rather than styles, as I said, Amy Winehouse or Norah Jones or something like that, that's what I would say, or even Patti Smith.
What I like to do before I do an interview is I do a bit of research into your background on if you have a website or if you have Instagram, and I have a browse through there. Then I asked Gemini what it knows about you, and Gemini compared you to PJ Harvey.
Okay, wow.
Which I couldn't hear, to be honest, but maybe from way back, if you're saying you had that sort of punky sound, which then went into the more folky sound, maybe that was it.
I don't think you're ever done searching, so I think this always evolves. I think I've definitely found a voice now that I'm really happy with. This is obviously, we're mostly kind of talking about this release now. Je veux is a start of something, but we're working on a few other tracks that hopefully will be released soon enough. And that again goes maybe a little bit, it has a full band in it, with a big drum kit and everything. And I think that again goes a little bit back to somewhere between the sort of timeless jazzy style to something a bit rockier and all of that. So I don't know. It's like, for me, it definitely would be somewhere between maybe PJ Harvey and the jazzy thing, like, if you're listening to a whole record or to more than one song, I'd say you definitely want a variety of styles a little bit, like, I like when there's definitely a song or two that are almost stripped down, where it's like kind of a naked song and then you've got a full band. So I think that the aspects of the folk or the punk rock and all of that, it's always going to keep coming back, because it's like when you're doing a live show as well, it's all about the dynamics. So definitely not every song's going to be as jazzy maybe as this last one was, But when I was younger, I think PJ Harvey was that was a lot more evident in that for sure. There's a song on Raw that's called All Souls Day. That was definitely the kind of grungy kind of feel to it, for sure.
So how did you come to work with Glen Hansard? You mentioned that he's been involved in the theatre. Is that how you met him, or was it through the music?
I was 10, actually. I mean, this is an amazing story. Like, I was touring with my grandparents. We were at a festival in France that lasts about a month during the summer, and I was 10. So this was in 2012. Glenn would have met my grandpa. So my grandpa's called Paddy Hayter. He's had the Footsbarn Travelling Theatre Company, and they met in a pub in 2008 in Belfast. Kind of, I think, as two very, very specific artists, falling into each other's gazes and radars and just energy, in the moment. And they stayed in touch, became close friends. And yeah, Glenn ended up coming over and joining them for a bit. And even if he wasn't in the show straight away, he was around and he was just, there with us. And later he was involved in a couple of things in productions. He was just basically around, like, playing songs with his guitar by the fire every night, and I was a 10-year-old kid. And I remember at the time, like, I was so shy. I was not at all the way I am now or the way I perform now. I just remember watching him every night, and I was completely just taken away. I completely fell in love with music through that, because I had no idea, I was a kid. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm watching someone really famous or really successful play. Like, I just saw the rawness, the honesty of the music and of the songs, which he completely has. And so he really introduced me to music, and he was a really great inspiration to have, and he was really good to me. And he actually bought me my first guitar afterwards, and he was at the time partially living in Prague. Sometimes we'd meet up and go to music stores and just play music, and then when I was about 13, and I started my band, I was sending him recordings of my band, and he was like, oh yeah, you should listen to the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed and stuff. And then we had a couple of sessions where he showed me how he writes songs and kind of explained what he does when he writes lyrics and all of that. So he's just been such a great inspiration and friend and support always, and I'm just fortunate enough that we continued this connection. I mean, he's probably one of my greatest friends, because you don't know many people you meet at that age that continue being in your life, and your relationship evolves because you go from being a kid to a grown-up and to a friend and a colleague, someone you end up working with. We were in one production together, which was amazing, and we toured together. I moved to Ireland 2 years ago, and I called him up and I was like, I still actually don't have any songs recorded now, my new songs that I've been playing live, and I don't really know how to present myself, because you do need something to give to people, if you're trying to get gigs and all of that. And yeah, he was just great. Once again, he invited me over he has a little rehearsal room in the back of his house, and we just had one mic and just recorded the 6 songs over and over live. And that was it. It was very simple. We never even mixed it or nothing, and it was just to have that. That's why I called it raw, and he was really brilliant, because he was just there, and he was, helping me produce it, but in a way that he wasn't telling me what to do. He was just
bringing the ideas out of you, basically.
Exactly. That really helped to find my own way after with that, and now I'm really happy I found musicians that, are backing me up, that I think I know what I want now, thanks to the fact of all of this experience of creating, and it's a never ending process,
I had a bunch of questions that you've already answered coming up about the theatre side of things, but do you think that acting is a break from music, or music is a break from acting for you, or are they inseparable?
That's a very good question. I continuously do all of it all the time, obviously, and especially depends on, what jobs come through and what's happening. I mean, with Footsbarn, with my family's theatre group, it's always all connected, because, we always have music in the shows. Now, in this show that we're working on is great, because it's almost got a slight cabaret feeling to it. So there's even more focus on the music here. So we're using a bunch of my songs in it as well, So for me, theatre doesn't exist without music, and music doesn't really exist without having some sort of a performance to it. So it definitely is something that one helps the other constantly, Yeah, if I'm going to be honest, and probably the music would be a break from acting usually, because music is something that comes. This is really funny. I don't know if I've ever really properly talked to anyone about this, but I'm sure a lot of people would agree that as artists, we love to really put ourselves out there to push the limits. So I think if we're getting too comfortable doing something, it loses some sort of a spark that we should have. So acting for me is something that I love doing it, but it's still something I'm definitely sometimes scared of. I'm definitely nervous about. I'm definitely, yeah, obviously still learning all of these things. But I know that when I go out there and do it, I know I'm going to enjoy it and have an amazing time. With music, the thing is, if I'm just going to go and sing a song, often I'm doing it for a pure pleasure of just doing that and singing somewhere out on a grass, doing that somewhere, I don't necessarily take a Shakespeare's monologue to just take my mind off things and have a lovely moment and whatever. So I think that's the beauty of music a bit, is that it can be very effortless.
But in your musical performance, you also put some of the drama and the theatre background into play as well, I assume.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also, I'm beginning to find that more and more as well with Je te veux. I feel like it can become a very, theatrical song. Like, I don't know if you watched we released a official video for that we filmed in Paris. It's on YouTube, and it's actually my grandfather's in it and a few people from my theater school or the company that, and it's all very theatrical because it's people that, do both music and theater. And it's quite simple, really. It's just avant-garde kind of Parisian calf, timeless vibe, It's, the performance, and it's funny because you can go many things this way, like you've got many introverts that become, performers, and it's always, it can be done so many ways. I'm also not saying that when you're doing music or singing songs, you have to overdo it. And, there's still the balance of going in and out, keeping it simple too. Like, as I said, just sing a song and don't overact it either.
The new single, you mentioned that may be part of several more tracks you're releasing. What are you working on? Are you recording at the moment or writing, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, as I said, this is definitely a new chapter for me. And I can feel like in my writing, things have changed and evolved as well. And everything fell into place so greatly. I met these guys that I've recorded Je te veux with they're based in Dublin. We met through friends, and it ended up being a great collaboration. And, I think after we did this song, we kind of kept going because they were like, oh, you've got more songs, let's do it, So there was a few I already had written. There's a few I've been writing since. And we just recorded 2 more, and definitely hoping to keep going on that. And, because there is definitely a momentum, a flame that works with that, And as I said, every song is a bit different. Like, there's definitely more of a band feeling in the next 2 we just did. It's a great journey. I mean, I'm still trying to find a way about it as well. I mean, this day and time for artists, it's a really funny one, and about releasing music and about doing it right. How are you going to find, I don't know, I can't even get into the whole labels and distributors thing and all of that. But it's definitely something that's a big part of it. You want it to get the exposure it deserves. Everyone wants that, of course, Yeah, so basically right now, we keep working. We're in touch, where I am in and out of Ireland. So it's basically whenever I'm there, I call them up and we just keep working, So we'll see if it becomes an album, or if maybe it's just a few tracks now, and then we see where that's going. It's definitely on fire, and it's gonna keep releasing things.
That's good to hear. You've played some European shows this year, but according to your website, you don't have any upcoming shows. Is this because you've got the theatre thing going on, or are you still sort of midway through booking a bunch of stuff? Where are you at with that at the moment?
Thanks to this specific tours we're going to do, we've actually found a little formation within the group with the 2 other musicians that are in there, that we can kind of do both. So we're going to do, as I said, the show's a little bit of a cabaret thing, but we're going to do that. And then often, I think after the show, we'll kind of have a little break, and then we'll do a gig, because we're trying to kind of create a whole like soirée, like a whole evening of things for people. So we'll have a little bar in the corner. Again, not even a cheeky way, a clever way of going about it, because we'll have the tent that we put up so people can really come and enjoy a whole night of things. That way I'll be playing plenty of music this summer too. I think I'm also seeing how I'm going to go about that in the future. There's a certain way, I suppose, I've been doing things for the past 10 years. And sometimes I got a big break, like last year I went on tour with Razorlight. I was supporting them, which was an amazing experience. It was like an intimate tour. They did 250 to 500 people. They usually do shows for thousands of people. That was a great experience. A support slot, so that, it was half an hour each night, and playing solo, which was an amazing experience. But again, it's like, how does this whole thing work? Could I take a band with me on tour?
So I came up with a new question. This is going to be the last question in all the interviews I do now. What music are you listening to at the moment that the diverse listeners of this podcast may not be aware of and should take some time to check out?
Oh, wow. So there's a few. I mean, I have so many friends that, make beautiful music, of course. And I suppose that's always a great thing to mention. I did a couple of shows with Stephen Hodd in May, and he's just really lovely. I mean, again, it's kind of sort of a Glen Hansard feel a little bit, very kind of raw, emotional sort of thing. And he's an amazing guitarist and singer. He did a few tours with Passenger. I think he was in his band. Then, this is funny. Something that people wouldn't be aware of. I'm always embarrassed. It sounds like I'm not listening to much music or whatever, which is not true. But you know what? There's a duo. If I'm gonna mention a few completely different styles, which could be smart. They're called Lunatractors, which is, again, it's people that I've met, worked with a little bit. They played at a festival of ours. That's an amazing kind of mixture of everything. They're a duo, they're a couple as well. I mean, it's kind of incredible. It's like they create their whole unique style as well, from playing music to their visuals, to all of that. So I think that's really interesting. And another friend whose name, so she's called Shakilo. She's half French, half Polish. So, well, her name is Christine, but her stage name is Shakilo. So that's a little, I went from an Irish to a British duo to a French Polish duo to keep it
so you're just traveling across, really.
Yeah, to keep it international, and it's a male and then a mixed duo and a female. So I thought I covered everything there. It took me a little while, but I got there.
So for anyone wishing to find out more about you, you're on Instagram. You have a website, which is just zoehayter.com, which is Hayter. You're pretty active on Instagram, aren't you?
I'd say so. Yeah, that's probably the most updated social media. Yeah, for sure.
But in terms of biog, you've got a pretty in-depth biog on your website as well. So.
Oh yeah. I try to work on that continuously. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Zoe's music can be found on all streaming services, or at least all the ones that I've been trying out, because I'm trying to get away from Spotify and their warmongering. Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, Zoe.
Thank you so much. This has been great. Thank you.
And do let us know when you have some new material coming out, and we can chat again.
Oh, absolutely.